people really need to stop using the 2008 financial bailouts in their arguments. And I want to show you exactly why, because in many cases, it's defeating their own argument and they don't realize they're doing it because they don't understand the history of it. And I understand why they don't, because unfortunately, the mainstream media, they like to use blanket terms and then they don't actually give any context behind those blanket terms. And then it creates a mess. And then people that I think in many ways agree with each other start to disagree with one another because they don't have the proper terms in place. So what happened in 2008? Well, there were a bunch of quote unquote bailouts. Now, this is where everything kind of circles back to, all right, the word bailout. But like anything, you always need more context. What do I mean by that? If I were to tell you, I got hit yesterday, you would be very wise. You would be very rational to say, okay, Clay, you got hit by what? Right? Because the word hit, there's different types of hit. If I were to tell you I got hit by a freight train, you probably wouldn't believe me because I wouldn't be, that you'd be dead, right? Or if I told you I got hit by a feather from a bird, so yes, both are hit, but there's a drastic difference within the same term of hit. And the same with bailout. Yes, in 2008, lots of banks, lots of companies were bailed out. And I bring this all up because the argument that I'm seeing right now is in regards to the student loan forgiveness, debate and the talking point goes similar to, hey, you know what? The banks were bailed out in 2008. All those people were bailed out in 2008. So why not help out the little person? Why not help out the average person with some student loan bailout, right? That's the argument that's being made. And it's not being made from, at least I don't think it's being made, because that would be kind of an immoral, illogical argument. But I don't think those people are saying, hey, you know what? Bailouts are bad, therefore let's do more bad, right? That makes no moral, logical sense. If you believe that the 2008 bailouts were bad, then that doesn't mean that it's okay to do more bad, right? But I don't think anybody's making that claim. I think they're just saying, hey, it's been done before, so why not do it again? Except in this case, let's help out the small person. But that's apples and oranges. We need to understand what actually happened in the 2008 bailouts. And to better explain this and just to show you the proof here, the facts, that way I'm not accused of just making stuff up, let's take a look right here, which you can see, and props out to this site, ProPublica. They do a great job, and they up to date. They are tracking the bailout from all the way back in 2008. So they go through, and if you click right there, that link right there, it goes and breaks down things bit by bit. It's actually quite impressive. Give credit where credit's due. But just to cover things right here, our database accounts for both the broader $700 billion bill and the separate bailout of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Altogether, accounting for both the TARP and the Fannie and Freddie bailout, $635 billion has gone out the door. So let's go down here and you can see exactly how this is all played out, and they break it down. And like I said, you can get into as many details as you want with this site. But in total, which is pretty crazy, 999 recipients, which, as we already read about, $635 billion went out, which was the total disbursement. And of that $635 billion, $390 billion has been returned. And then $353 billion has been returned in terms of dividends, interest, and other fees. Meaning, in total, the government has made $109 billion net to date, meaning that is actually profit. So what is my point here? My point here is that this bailout was not a handout. They needed to pay that money back. They needed to not only pay that money back, but there were fees, there was interest, there was dividends that also needed to be paid. So it was not a handout. Yes, it was a bailout. These people were struggling. These people were having difficulties, and they were bailed out, but it was not a handout. And as a taxpayer, I appreciate that. Now, I realize we can go down a whole nother rabbit hole of, well, geez, Clay, bailouts are bad no matter what. And hey, I understand, I hear where you're coming from, and that is totally a rational conversation that can be had. But all I'm trying to get across here is that this bailout, yes, it was a bailout, but it was not a handout, money was being paid back. So to use this then from, hey, you know what? People were bailed out in 2008, all these companies. Why can't some student loans be bailed out of some money? Well, because do you see now the problem? Because no, these companies, now we're talking about a handout. Handout was just, nope, there you go, take the money. That's a completely different bailout. It's a bailout in a handout sense, not a bailout in a, no. We'll bail you out, but you're gonna pay us back with interest, with dividends, and with fees. Two very different scenarios. And when you're talking with somebody, again, they're coming from a place of compassion, right? They're coming from a place of, hey, we've done it before. Why can't we do it to help the little guy? But again, you got to explain, well, this is an apples and oranges situation. And if you want to use the hit example, right? I got hit. It would be rational to say, hit by what, right? And just because, oh, they were bailed out. Yeah, bailed out how? A handout where nothing was to be paid back, or were things supposed to be paid back? So just keep that in mind whenever you see the 2008 argument being made. And maybe you've been making the argument, and I understand, again, I get it. The media keeps things so surface deep. They just throw out the bailout and apply all across, and they make you seem like it's the same across the board, when in all actuality, it's not. One is a handout, which is what the student loan stuff is. It is a bailout, but it's a bailing out of loans that have already been made, whereas the financial bailouts were, hey, let's give you a loan to bail you out, but you are gonna make that loan and pay it back to us. And then I know people will throw out the PPP loans, which is a very sticky subject. And I fully agree that in some situations, just ridiculous to know what companies actually took that money when they didn't even need to, and then didn't have to pay it back. I mean, just goes to show how inept the government can be at times. But PPP loans are also a little different because it's essentially the government smashing out a window and then paying for that window, right? Because in some cases, there was no choice. The business literally had to shut down. So the government did damage to them, but to the government's credit, they did pay them for that damage being done. But the people didn't have any choice, so to take that loan, which it would be really messed up, right? To bash out a business's window and then make them take on debt for bashing out their window, right? Hey, we're gonna give you this money, and hey, guess what? You have to pay interest on it, even though we're the one that smashed out the window, right? That doesn't make any sense. So to give credit where credit's due, I understand the government and those PPP loans because it was never their choice to begin with. Where student loans, right, that's where the difference becomes, well, it was their choice to take on those loans, right? They were not forced by the government to take on those loans. The government didn't show up, bash your window out and say, now you have to take this student loan. That's not how that works. So again, apples and oranges in that regard. So just like I said, some talking points out there, and I do hear where everybody's coming from. And if you do come across somebody that's arguing for student loan, what I found is social media is they really are coming from a place of compassion, and they're coming from a place of wanting to help others. And I understand that, but you just got to remember that there's no such thing as free money. Free money exists, even if it's from the printing press, which means inflation, which means, people that you probably think you're helping, you're not actually helping, but like I said, those can be other videos. But my point here is that I hear where people are coming from, I understand where they're coming from, but they just don't have their facts right. They're using too broad of a term, and it's making them actually have self-defeating arguments, because if you're arguing that people should be bailed out because they were bailed out in 2008, well, what you're actually saying is, okay, so therefore student loans should be paid back because the people that were bailed out in 2008 were forced to pay those things back. So it's just a self-defeating argument in that regard. But it does make sense if you just think bailout is a handout for everybody, but those companies did not get a handout. So hopefully this helps. And like I said, I'll put a link to that site below. It's actually a really cool site. You can go and track things, but it's still kind of crazy that 2008, which was well over a decade ago, the government's still making money on some of those deals. So hey, government, as a taxpayer, well done to you. I appreciate my money not being totally squandered. I appreciate my money actually being used to turn a profit. I mean, if we could get a couple more of those deals here and there, I wouldn't mind at all. I mean, hey, if that's how the government's going to act, turn some profits with taxpayer money, I'm much more softer in that regards. But unfortunately, that's usually not the case. However, it was here. So thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below. I can't promise I'm going to get in some epic debate with you, but like I said, my core point here is just Understand the context of the word bailout if you're going to use it in your arguments, especially if you bring up that 2008 bailout. First off, thanks so much for watching the entire video. Real quick, before you go, I want to invite you to a live webinar, web class, training, workshop, online event, whatever you want to call it, but it will be me live revealing to you what I've discovered that has allowed me to transform myself from being an employee to being my own boss, including how I had only one losing day out of 73 days in total. I'm going to cover 3 keys that have helped me unlock profitable consistency within the markets. The first key is super weird, but in a productive type of way. The second key is super awesome because it quite literally is wired into our DNA as humans, making it very easy to use. But in a cruel way, this becomes a pitfall for many traders. I'll explain it all though, including how to avoid the pitfall that it creates for some. And yeah, the third key, when you hear it, sounds way too good to be true, but it's not, and I'll show you how it all works. Then at the end, I open it up for a question and answer session that is, again, totally live. Even if you can't make the live session, please still sign up as it will be recorded, and you can go back and watch the replay that I will send you. Click the image on the screen or click the link down in the description box so you can get the date and time and claim your spot, which I should note is limited due to the fact that this truly is a live event. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I'll be seeing you soon.